Ravioli Ravioli. Welcome back to a brand new episode of the Ravioli Ravioli podcast, episode 3. We have a very exciting guest. No one saw this coming. Square, thank you very much for being here.
I'm back.
I see that you're in a new house, in a different house than you were last time.
This is my depression home.
Good.
This is where I go. Whoever made this background drawing is obsessed with owls, which is me. No, I didn't. But
is it a drawing?
I found it online.
I couldn't even tell that it was a drawing.
I don't know if it's a drawing or a picture.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like a picture.
Yeah.
Of somebody obsessed with owls.
Owls are cool.
Yeah, they're good. I don't have like 3 books on my windowsill that are all about owls though.
Yeah, well, you're missing out. So before we begin, just a few things. It's nice. It's always nice having Square on. I haven't run out of guest ideas, guys. Just wanted to let you know that, all right, just gonna cycle between Arrow and Square, Squareo. But it's the guest that was supposed to be on today. Something came up last minute. I asked Square if he would be okay with coming on.
And I said no.
At first he said no, but then we talked money, and then I was able to persuade him. Also, again, new set for the 3rd time. Still experimenting with things. Now, you may be wondering to yourself, why this, right? Why is this here? But I just looked at it. Oh. So the reason it's there is the refresh rate on this light or whatever the fuck, it blinks if I have it set to a lower setting. You see these lines happening? Yeah, that's because and look, now they're going faster. Now they're going faster, and then they eventually disappear. But they have to be I have to have it real close to me. Now, while I still figure out my set and work things out, we're just gonna have to accept this being the norm for now. And of course, I'm gonna pull out a couple of toys again, as per usual. And then we can get this party started, so to speak. Square.
I brought a screw this time.
Oh, hell yeah, dude. Yeah, show me the different things you can do with a screw.
This is it. This is all I do.
Okay. That's good. Hold on, I need to take... Oh my god, dude. Alright.
I didn't actually bring it. I found it on the ground because I installed a graphics card the other day and one of these screws fell out, so I probably should put that
I'm
in.
gonna play with this camera focus. A tech deck. Old tech deck skateboard that I have. Actually, hold on. That's gonna be...
Yeah, that's like
that's
much
gonna be loud
effort too.
as well. Yeah, it's like hard. I'm like, yeah, I'm definitely gonna get too interested in the skateboard. You're right. Yeah, no, I need to find something different. Hold on. Oh my god, dude, there's too much. All right, one of these. Hold on, camera. Come on now, camera. Pull yourself together. No, not on my face.
Oh no.
Here we go. This.
It's too translucent.
And it pulls and such, right? One of these.
Nice. You know what I just realized? Why your lighting's that way.
Why?
We caught you in the middle of a dentist visit.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. My dentist left right quick, and I was like, cool, let me set up my microphone and everything while he's away.
You have a very sinister dentist.
Yeah. Yeah. He always operates in pure darkness and just one light.
Except for one light.
Mm-hmm. It's weird, but he's really good. He's good at what he does. Oh, god damn it. No, this is too important. You know what? What if I just go with 2 of them? You know? I mean, come on. 2 of these. Then I can like do this and shit. Oops.
Yeah.
I can like make them go inside each other and shit. Look. Like this little tripod now. Just like that.
Wow. It's perfect.
It's perfect. That's what I'm gonna play with. Thank you for waiting, Square. I know this is like the most important part of the podcast, so
Yeah, I thought this was just it.
This is it. Yeah. Now we're gonna play with our toy. You play with your screw. I play with this. Just for the rest of the podcast, that's all we do. Does it help you when you fidget?
I'm gonna learn how to do a kickflip.
Does fidgeting help you?
I mean, like I just do. I don't really think about it in terms of if it helps me or not. Just sometimes if there's something there,
When you used to be in school, when you were a student of when you went education was a thing in your life, right?
Yeah.
Were you able to just listen, take notes, and focus, or would you play around?
I was pretty disruptive.
You were disruptive?
Yeah, so I don't think I had an outlet.
Oh.
I think I was just pretty disruptive.
Because I would like stack pencils and things like that. And some teachers were cool with it, and some teachers were like, stop it, focus. And I'll be like, that's how I focus.
No, I mean, I was pretty shitty in high school. I think, if I remember college correctly, I used to try to take notes, but I also would, it's like if I wasn't taking notes, I scribbled a lot.
Yes.
I'm terrible with art, but I would just like doodle.
Yeah, I doodled a lot as well.
Mostly designs and shapes.
Yeah. I did stuff like
but
that.
They were terrible.
And I did like political comics, stuff like that.
Oh yeah, I didn't do that.
I did it once. I did it just once. I wanted to make it seem like I was into that. I wasn't. No. Dude, this is the best part. I fucked it all up, right? Like, look, now this part is... no, stop my face. It's all tangled up and shit. But now I have to untangle it, like, piece by piece. And that's the best part.
That's amazing.
Okay, I've separated them now. But now they're real fucked.
Riveting.
Look at that. Real fucked.
Wow.
And if you're listening to this podcast and not watching it, I hope you're enjoying all of this. This is riveting information. Anyway, Square. Yeah. Man, what's going on, man? Like, I see you're in your depressed home. What's happening?
Oh yeah, I was gonna point out, like, you can't see that the rain is falling in the background, can you? That makes me really sad.
Yeah, I can.
Oh, cool. In my little preview, I don't see it, so I was a little sad.
Yeah, but you can always just look behind yourself and see it. Can you do that for me once? I just want to see if that works.
I have a bad neck. That's as far as I go.
I feel you.
See, look, it's just right there. That's the window.
Yeah, it looks great, dude. It looks really, really good.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You made me lose my screw, so thank you.
Dude, I screwed up.
Oh yeah, this thing you said that used to annoy the shit out of people.
Yeah, I did that. I did that a lot. I liked stacking pencils was fun because you could just like, it's like building a house out of pencils and pens.
Yeah.
That shit was fun.
Log cabin.
Yes. Yeah. It was like a little cabin, and then the teacher would be like, I will kill you, or whatever they used to say.
That makes sense.
I will murder you.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's like they used to say.
Yeah, back when we were kids, teachers weren't cowards,
Yeah, exactly.
They would threaten you.
How do you feel with your halo? I can see your halo.
Well,
halo.
It's
halo.
You were able to completely dismiss my question and flip it back on me, but I'll answer it. I'm not gonna avoid.
Did you steal it from your girlfriend's 4-post bed?
This?
That's a really dumb reference. Don't worry. Go ahead, keep going.
I did. This is my girlfriend's light, though, not mine. So.
Wow. So you're just like that early 2000s band that I forget who they are.
Limp Bizkit.
They're where the guy stole a halo from his girlfriend's 4-post bed.
Well, I sort of did. It's actually, that's where she keeps it. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
You're just like them.
I am them. All of them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Unless they're canceled, in which case I'm nothing like them.
They were you remember that the band that was like, I just wanna fly like a birdie up so high in the sky?
No. I mean, that sounds familiar, but I don't remember who that would be.
Hiya, hi.
What the fuck? No, that sounds... What?
Put your arms around me. Man, you're gonna get sued for this one.
Oh, dude, yeah. Oh, dude, I'm gonna get a strike because you nailed that song perfectly.
It's so perfect.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I'm trying not to do it.
Yeah, the copyright. I'm gonna get a copyright claim
for
for this. It's gonna pick it up. Yeah. Thanks for holding back.
Yeah, but anyway, people will know who I'm talking about.
You think so?
And all will be vindicated. Yeah. They were really famous.
Most of the people who watch this were probably born around then.
Yeah, but like they were famous enough at the time that I think some people will know who they are. I think some people really like them still.
Okay. Yeah. It's a shame you don't know their name.
Anyway, how are you doing?
Stop asking me how I'm doing. I'm good. I'm fine. I'm fine. I had kind of, I don't know, it's been a little bit weird. I talked about it on my latest stream, but I always kind of go through, like, I have these waves of depression, and I sometimes I feel like, oh, maybe they're triggered by this or that or the third, but sometimes it's kind of hard to tell. It just feels like it's out of nowhere.
Yeah.
It comes, and it's makes it difficult to find motivation to do anything. And it's kind of like a vicious cycle, because I'll start having it, and then I'll start overanalyzing it and disliking myself for going through it again. Like I won't be doing very well all of a sudden, and then I'll be angry at myself for not like feeling well and not knowing why, and then I'll fuel it furthermore. And so, yeah, and I think being so busy as of late hasn't helped, because it just feels like maybe there is something there and I'm not addressing it. And then I start to get existential, and I'm like, oh man, time's flying by, and I'm fucking, all I do is work and feel empty. And when I'm going to be old, I'm going to look back at my life and be like, wow, I worked a lot. Maybe that was impressive to someone, but I didn't enjoy my time. And so that gets me down. So I've been trying to take it a little easier, especially now that I'm more active online. I realized that before I always kept that kind of stuff private, and I only talked about it in my music. But now I got to a point where if I don't mention it at all, it feels like an unwise thing to do, because then I have to go on stream and be like, well there kids, I'm back, wacky Rav or whatever, right? And meanwhile I'm just like not feeling well. So instead I tweeted out that I haven't been feeling very well, but I made sure to frame it like, look, this is not a cry for help. I don't need, I'll be okay. I'll be okay. I just wanted to be forthcoming about these things. And that, if anyone else is going through something like this, remind yourself that you're valid. It's all corny kind of stuff, but it really helped me, because as soon as I went on stream an hour later, I didn't feel like the need to pretend that I was in a great mood, I got to just be like honest, and that felt better, like less stress trying to pretend that I was someone I wasn't. And as the stream went on, I actually, I don't know, felt a lot better, and I don't know, I was in a good mood by the end of it. So I don't know, I'm kind of rambling, went all over the place, but that's how I am usually.
No, that's cool.
But yeah, that's where I'm at.
I get that. I think that there's like a certain aspect of things like, I think working definitely, like overworking definitely leads to that a little bit, but then also like we were talking about earlier, the idea whenever I get, because I've been kind of like, I guess what I would call chemically down in terms of like not as like a serious issue chemically or anything like that, but where your brain is just depleted, and it's not because of any specific thing, it's just you just don't feel energy, and you feel bad about things in general.
Yeah.
And we were talking about earlier, it's like I've kind of gotten to a point with that nowadays where whenever I feel that way, yeah, definitely it's not good to think about it in rational terms, because there is a reason for it, but there's not like at least for me, there's sometimes not a reason why it happens.
Yeah.
So I feel similar to you. It's like if I start thinking about why am I down, or like why did this happen, or thinking about certain things around me, it's like everything is gonna seem bad.
Yeah.
If you're trying to justify it when you feel bad, it's same with like, if you're trying to feel like, oh, am I down because I'm working too hard, and then you think about working when you're down, then you just remember everything as being not fun.
Yeah.
But then when you're in like a better mood, you're like, wow, this is like the best job in the world.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
100%.
So it's this weird thing where you have to keep check on it. You have to think about it, but you can't
hyperfixate on it.
Your perspective in the moment. Unless it doesn't go away for a long time, then like that's like when you need professional help,
for
right?
sure. Yeah, for sure. You need either like some sort of medical help or therapy, or a combination of the two. I do find that overanalyzing, when you're feeling bad, or at least when I'm feeling bad, I'll find something bad in a good thing. You know, I'll try to. So what doesn't work is the old school mentality of like, but think about how lucky you are in your life, right? That never helped me when people said that, because they're like, look, you get to do what you love, and I'm like, and I'm not having fun. I get to do what I love, and all I am is feeling empty and numb and depressed. Like, then what is the point? You know, like I started to find like the worst in good things. Like I'll find flaws in everything that is good in my life. So instead, distracting myself is sort of something that works. Putting myself in my comfort zone. So like maybe a game that I've beaten a million times, but I know calms me. Playing that whilst listening to a podcast, and maybe a series of podcasts episodes that I've already listened to before, re-listening to them. So that's for me my comfort zone, like either Game Grumps or some sort of comedy podcast in the background while I'm playing a game next to my girl. And kind of, I think because I have the stimulus visually and I'm engaged and I'm listening to the podcast, I get myself out of my own head. Like I leave very little room for self-analysis. That helps, because then if I stay in that for a while, when I get out of it, I'm like, you know what? That was fun. I enjoyed myself. I feel relaxed. I'm going to be okay. So sometimes it helps. That's what I usually do.
Yeah, yeah. And it's different for everybody, because, you know, you're a very self-motivated person. So even though everyone deals with it, there are like, you know, there's balance to that type of stuff, because then also for me, for a long time, like the escapism becomes like kind of addictive too.
Yeah.
So like you got to find ways to deal with those things in a productive manner, to where you're setting yourself up to recharge, rather than like rely on. And I don't mean what you're doing is anything like that. I think that's what you're doing. You're trying to recharge yourself. But I think that there's like the other aspect of like trying to take a moment for yourself, but then it becomes like,
yeah, becomes a week.
You're just like stuck
then it's
in
a
that
month,
moment.
and then yeah, for sure. That's what I'm
Yeah.
scared of. That's happened in the past, where that's why I don't like it when, you know, people say take a break. I always fear that, because I'm like, okay, I know 2 days is a healthy amount, but I worry that 2 days will turn into, on the third day, I'm like, you know what? Just one more day. I just need it. I need that. And then somehow, before you notice it, it becomes a week or longer, and then it's difficult to reintegrate yourself into your work life or whatever it is that you need to do, and then it loses the purpose. It was supposed to help you function, but instead it, you know, I don't know, derails you and your progress. At least it's happened to me in the past. I think I'm better at balancing it now. I think it's giving myself a break in the evenings, or like allocating certain hours, just like, okay, this hour, whatever happens, I do nothing that I need to do. I just do whatever that I want to do, and it cannot be work related. You know?
Yeah, I think so many solutions come from planning, really. Because like you said, like if you're feeling down and you're like, I'm gonna take today off, and then tomorrow you're still feeling down, you're like, I'm gonna take today off, and then you just keep on taking days off. Sometimes that works,
Yeah.
but sometimes you have, you know, the trouble of like never wanting to do stuff because it's hard to do stuff. But if you're planning, like especially as you're getting busier and having more things, and you work for yourself and you don't have external deadlines, you only have internal ones. Making those plans when you're not feeling low, when you know that it's like it's a possibility, so that you can keep your mental health going, I think is like a huge part of that. So then, like you said, you're making a plan where, you know, in the evenings you're not doing work things. And so like when the evenings come, you can always recharge, rather than the evening coming and you feeling bad about doing work, so then you don't do work, so then you feel bad about not doing work.
Yeah.
You already have like a thing in your head that's telling you like, no, this is where I recharge.
Yeah.
And I feel like the same thing about like taking 2 days off. Instead of, you know, getting down and then taking 2 days off. If you start planning your schedule around taking those days off when you need, like you figure out like a month out of a month, I need to take at least like 6 days off completely.
Yeah, you can't burn out and
Yeah.
then be like, I'm gonna take 2 days off, because then it's yeah, gotcha. You're right.
Yeah. I think you can do that. I just think it's easier to plan your days off eventually because you know you're going to burn out because that's the type of like worker you are. You're just going to keep doing stuff.
Well, that's also the other thing with work, is that as you should plan your breaks, you should plan your work around, like, okay, yes, when you're working for yourself, there's always work that can be done. Always. Just there's always something you can do. And as long as you understand that, I think it's an important realization I had recently, where I was like, there's always something I can do. That doesn't mean I should always be doing something. And so instead, I kind of try to tell myself, like, all right, on this day, I definitely need to do these things. I want to do these things. And if I have some time, maybe I'll do a little bit of this. So by the end of the day, maybe I'm only giving myself 2-3 things to do on the day. But by the end of the day, I don't feel guilt of like, all right, now I'm going to take it easy for the rest of the day. And I know that I've done everything I set out to do. I got everything done. Or if like I didn't finish one thing, I'm like, I know that I've allocated an hour for it tomorrow or whatever. It's just so that it doesn't, because otherwise, without planning, it feels like every moment you're not doing something, you're letting an opportunity slip between your fingers. It really does feel that way. It just feels like, well, sure, I could do this thing I need to do, or I think is good to do. I could do it tomorrow, but if I do it today, then the benefits of whatever the outcome is of that thing would come in sooner. And if I do it too late, or if I push it back, then what if another opportunity comes my way? And now I have to handle both of these things at once. And it's like these toxic kind of thoughts that oftentimes infiltrate my mind. And I say toxic because they're irrational. That it is, when you work for someone, you have defined hours, you have defined targets and what you need to do. When you work for yourself in arts and entertainment, it's easy to not do that for yourself, because any moment you could be like, that would be a cool idea, and I could do this and I could do that. Oh shit, I should do that. I just remembered I could do this. I caught myself thinking many times the last few months, like, what is the smallest amount of sleep that I could get while still remaining healthy so I can get as much work done? And then also thinking things like, man, I wish we didn't have to sleep. It's just like I'd have so much more time to do things. And then I reflected upon it, and I was like, I'm not having fun. This is not a good thing to do, overworking myself and putting all this pressure. It's just I don't know. I think a lot of it honestly comes from ego and like other things in general. Like I think I grew up being a fairly insecure person. I went from one school to another many times. I went to at least like 6 different schools, and I always felt like, okay, I'm the new kid. I always look younger than everyone else just because I just look younger than I am, and I'm short. And so everyone's already developed their friend groups. Everyone's got a friend or something, and I have to try to find a way to integrate myself. And I would always try to be the kind of person I thought the circle wanted me to be. Whatever circle I needed to insert myself into, I wasn't myself. I was a bespoke Rav, Like every social situation was a container, and I was a liquid that had to fill it. And as a result, if I only had to do that once or twice, I don't know if I would have thought of it much. But having to do it over and over again, I think I got to a point where I became acutely aware of how whoever I am is not good enough. I always have to like remove certain aspects of my character and amplify others in order for people to accept me and like me.
Yeah, that's part of growing up too, though, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's just that, in school, the currency is cool. You know, in arts and entertainment world, the currency is clout. In just normal society, the currency, whether people like to think it or not, is money and status. You know, like otherwise we wouldn't have so many different brands of like the same types of cars, and you know, we wouldn't have like overpriced certain items and everything, because it's the ego is a thing. Everybody has like a sense of who they are and how they live their lives with that perception. And for me, I think it's very much been, well, I'm not even sure who I am and how do I like who I am, because I always had to create a bespoke craft. So my last years of the last high school I went to, I intentionally didn't try to make friends, and I intentionally didn't try to be accepted or anything like that. I just kind of did my own thing, and I pushed everyone away and fell into depression. And I don't know, since then, I think I've found a way to be myself around social situations, and as a public figure. I think I wouldn't say like I'm definitely 100% that found my sea legs online, but I think for the most part, I'm pretty comfortable with just being myself. That being said, all that trauma from my earlier years is still there. I still feel like there's a need for me to prove something. And I think that's why I work so hard. It's because I feel like, well, I want people to know that, like, look, I want people to see me and be like, man, Rav works his ass off, right? I want people to see like, damn, Rav made this happen and he made that happen. But why? You know, I ask myself, I know that sounds stupid, but I genuinely ask myself sometimes, like, why? Why is that the identity I've decided to commit to? And I don't know. Maybe it's just proving as always it has been, like proving people wrong, or maybe I'm still that bespoke Rav, you know? And it's just now I'm fitting myself into this new life that I have and this new situation, and I'm sure everyone to an extent is a bespoke version of themselves. I just feel like some people sacrifice more than others in terms of like qualities about themselves, and amplify certain things less than others do.
Sure. I mean, I think there's levels to it. It's this interesting aspect too, because it kind of reminds me, like, not what you're saying, but it also growing up, you know, feeling like people don't perceive you the way that there's this duality to it where people see you. So you have like the person that you feel that you are, and then you have which is constantly changing, you know, at all times, but there's kind of like a best fit line between the dots of your like personhood, your present personhood that gets connected, and you have this like legend of yourself in your brain. Not like you, but everybody. Everybody has this like narrative of who they are.
Yeah.
And then that narrative is not reality.
Mm-hmm.
And because it's not the whole story. And then there's like the fractured perceptions of what people see you and how you act around other people, how they perceive you. And then that's part of your identity as a person as well, which is like, so you have your narrative, and then you have like the perception of everybody that sees you. And then you have like, if you believe in it, like an objective like reality of who you are that like nobody can know, because it's also constantly changing, but it's also, you know, it's not perceived by anybody in its fullest extent. So there's no way to really know that. So as you're going through if it doesn't match up, it often won't match up with how other people perceive you, your narrative. And that's always been like this like weird thing for me, because I think it's kind of what you're talking about too, because first of all, people want to see you, and they expect, because we're really good at stereotyping, not in like a negative way, but like in an evolutionary way. Like we see like somebody that reminds us of something else in the past, and this is what we expect out of that person. And so when that person acts outside of that. When we're kids especially, we're terrible at dealing with that.
Yeah.
When we're adults, we've seen like way more people and way more different types of people, so we're a little bit more trained to expect the unexpected. But there is that level of like people putting you in a box and you putting people in a box and never expecting them to be different than you are, than they are. And that is like, when you're growing up, is such a frustrating feeling. Like I remember feeling that just in like simple things like sports. Because growing up, I was always really tall. Well, I wasn't always really tall, but I was like pretty tall, and then I got taller.
Yeah.
And then, but like in sports, I practiced really hard at like skill, and I had like decent amount of coordination, even though I didn't look like it. So I would always get, whenever I would start playing a sport, they would always try to put me in like unskilled big people parts of the sport, and I was like, no. Like in basketball, I was a point guard. In rugby, I was a fly half. In soccer, I was like attacker, center, mid. And every single time, it would take like multiple practices or games before people started realizing that I was really good at that. And like that's like such a small thing, but I feel like that's like a microcosm for like people just see you and they assume the thing is, and like growing up, there was like that, I had that aspect with me too in like a lot of my life. It's like you know, even trying to be like a musician where I'm from, the way that I was trying to be a musician as I got older, I put that on myself as like a thing that I had to be like, why would you want to do this? Like, why would you do this? This isn't like you're not a musician, you're lame for trying to do this. And like nobody would see you as a rapper or something like that. And I think that at some point it becomes like I remember growing up and seeing these people that had like no expectations about their lives and being like, why are you just like letting people decide what you can and like can't do? Like you have like zero imagination. But now like growing up, I've also realized that no, it's just like they don't want those things out of life. They want different things out of life that are like less important to me. But now they're more important to me and I see them. So I don't know. I think it's like very complicated, and it's a shitty feeling because you never know which perception is right. Like if the perception of your identity or of the other people's identity is more correct, or if like what. So you kind of have to just let that go and just like do the things that you. But I mean, it is hard to
let go, especially if it becomes deeply ingrained in you. You know, like it's, you know, a lot of times people are very self-deprecating, and they'll be like, oh, I'm very selfish, or I always do this, or I do that, and you know, if you get to know them better, you find out that, oh well, these are the kinds of things they heard from their parents. These are the kinds of things that maybe their friends said once or twice when they were growing up, or someone on the street or whatever. And then if it happens a couple of times or a few times, it becomes a pattern and you start to believe it. And all it really is, it's an earworm, you know? It's a funny thing. I think as people, if an earworm gets stuck in our heads, like a little bit of like some sort of jingle from an ad or a song, like a hook, we go around and we sing it to ourselves. You don't think you wrote it. You don't think you wrote that song. However, when we have like certain thoughts, self-deprecative thoughts, we're certain that we're the authors of those thoughts. That there's truth to those things, but they're just earworms. It's unfortunate, especially if you grow up hearing certain things or seeing how people interact with you, and you start pulling observations in a way that sort of creates this narrative in your head about who you are or what the world is like. It just gets stuck in your head. And I think one important thing to do is to humble yourself, is to maybe just reflect on oftentimes where, like, what if you have some sort of self-deprecative thought. One good thing to do is just start thinking, like, when was the first time someone called you the thing that you are calling yourself, right? Or when's the first time you witnessed somebody else call someone else that? And how did that feel? And then, like, do you recall any other moments in your life when you saw that? Because there's always a reason for whatever we call ourselves or we label ourselves as. We don't pull it from the ether. It has an origin. There's always an origin story behind. Like, there's usually trauma. We call it trauma, but it's just an origin story, essentially, of a behavior, an observation, a self-perception. And it's hard to untrain yourself, though.
Yeah, I mean, it's also hard because it's probably really complicated. It's
Yeah.
not. They aren't 1-to-1 ratios. They aren't like, this thing happened, so now I'm this way.
No.
This thing happened. I felt like this during that thing, and then years later, something else that doesn't make any connection to this happened, and all of those things twisted up with like me reading an article about some shit, and now like I feel this way.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, it's a chain of events, and then it becomes like a trigger. Like, there's certain triggers in your life that you'll see something, and it might be you might be consciously aware of it, or you might be more likely you're not at all. You see something. It could be like it could be a positive exchange between two people. Absolutely positive, everything good. But it triggers it because you're thinking to yourself, these people didn't know each other. They had this positive exchange. They gave each other an opportunity, a chance. If I was one of those people, that wouldn't happen. That's what my experiences inform me. That's unfair. There's no justice. You're not consciously thinking all of these things through, but oftentimes they just kind of like in a blink of an eye.
All you're thinking is, fuck that dude.
All you're thinking is like, well, yeah, you're thinking just like, it's like, what? Like, you might not even have a very conscious thought. You just see that, and for a quick split second, you just think that could never happen to me. That would never happen to me. Like, that would never, or whatever it is, And then you go away from that, and then you start only seeing that, It's like that exercise where it's like, if I tell you like, hey, number 52, just like remember number 52 and think about it every time you see it. You go around doing different things in life, you'll start seeing like, holy shit, the number 52 really appears frequently in my life. It's because you're thinking about it. You've been informed about this number and to pay attention to it, and so you are. And so when something triggers an emotional response, especially if it's linked to anxiety or depression, everything becomes like number 52. You start only seeing number 52 instead of the number. It is, things that upset you, things that make you feel inadequate.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's like kind of like what you were talking about earlier when I did a fart sound with my mouth.
You could do better than that, dude. That's okay.
No, I just accidentally did a fart sound.
You just try to cover up your real fart. Yeah.
No, but I mean, you were kind of talking about like the way people perceive, like, also kind of like tell you to like look at your life and like look what you've accomplished, blah blah blah. And it's like one of the biggest myths of, I don't know if it's like enlightenment or the science, the scientific method being discovered, or like rationality being a big like the European perception of reason and language and stuff. Like, one of the biggest myths that we've come to now, as a lot of people in our country or like world have come to, is that existence is rational. Like, like that reason, like human beings are rational creatures, when in reality, like, rationality is a tool that we've formed to uncover what is essentially irrational. Like, because we have no idea what's going on. I'm not saying there's not a reason for things to happen, like science exists, I'm not saying that, but that's like part of it's a tool that we use to be able to consistently discover new things. But then when people, so now we act, and maybe it's not because of that, but I think part of it is like, that's why people react that way. They're like, well, any rational person would see that you're doing well right now, why are you sad? Or like, when you're sad, you're like, why am I sad? And you start trying to figure it out, but it's not always connected to those things.
And I think it's irrational to say that. It's kind of like, it's many things are irrational, you know, like it's let's say you accidentally
People.
people, I mean, just living, as you said, living itself is like there's no rationale to existence. But like, let's say you cut yourself pretty bad, but you'll be okay, you know, you'll be okay, it's just a big cut on your arm. You can't rationalize to yourself like, hey, I'm gonna be all right, so I should switch off pain, because I know that it's an evolutionary instinct to protect myself, but I am guarded, I'm safe, I'm fine, I've disinfected it. Turn pain off. Turn the pain. You can't rationalize that, and we don't. But it's similar. It's a similar thing. It's a physical response, as is anxiety, as is anything to do with our moods and everything. It all comes down to like the chemicals. And obviously, I'm not saying that our environment, surroundings, and forces from the outside cannot make a difference. They obviously can. I just don't think rationalizing things is the way to go. You know, if I'm in deep pain, Vicodin's going to do a way better job of assisting me with coping with that pain than me rationalizing that it's okay. It's just, I'm going to be all right, you know? And it's...
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about Vicodin, but...
Okay. Codeine. I don't know. Okay, aspirin.
No, something that's like prescribed for like...
Yeah. No, but I'm saying,
making you feel
I'm
better.
giving an example of kind of...
Oh, you're talking about like physical pain.
Yeah, I'm giving an example of physical pain. Exactly. No.
I thought you meant like when I get sad, I take Vicodin, it's fine.
Yeah, that's healthy, right? I don't need anyone to tell me, Rav, you'll be okay. Just give me a mouthful of Vicodin. No, but what I'm saying is there's a reason we have antidepressants.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying.
Right? We have antidepressants, and not like your doctor doesn't prescribe a bunch of fortune cookies with positive messages inside them. You open up like, you're gonna be okay. Oh, word, I feel good now. No, it's there's a chemical component to things, and if you're aware of the fact that we are like, chemicals really are such a driving force in who we are, how we act, and there's countless numbers of them in us. I don't know how you can expect for people to think rationally and then get better from rationalizing things. It just makes no sense to me. That's why I was comparing it to trying to shut off physical pain.
I got what your like metaphor was at first, but then I missed that you were talking about physical pain the second time, and I thought you were just like, yeah, I mean, when you get sad, just take Vicodin. And I was like, okay, disclaimer.
Opiates, dude. It's a cure-all.
Yeah, I heard it's doing real well in the United States. People love them. All the best people take them. No, but yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, that's like why empathy is like by far the most important thing. Like it's funny because there's like a, you know, I don't want to get political. No, but like, just because the conversation isn't a political one.
Yeah.
But no, but there's this aspect of kind of this thing where we want to teach kids critical thinking. Critical thinking is incredibly important. But part of the country, or like a lot of people, like just completely dismiss. They see reason, and it's almost like a patriarchal thing, because it's almost like a masculine thing of like reason being like facts don't care about your feelings, and like I'm a man and I think logically and I don't have emotions. Emotions are stupid. And it's like next to critical thinking, empathy is like hand in hand with you can't like be a critical thinker without having empathy. And the ability to understand the complexity of the things that affect other people, that make them the way they are or react the way that they do. It like goes hand in hand with like understanding the world, and therefore like coming to any sort of like rational conclusions about how things end up. But it feels like that's I guess with everything we're talking about, like empathy is something that I've worked really hard training that I didn't have growing up, and I don't think I'm like at a place where I'm happy with the amount of empathy I have, but like trying to not like you were saying, like when people are just like, we watched this video the other day, some people from my work where we were having conversations about like um empathy and bias and racism and things like that. And like one thing that they brought up is like this video about empathy where it's like people tend to react to other people in the way that you're talking about. They're like, oh, it could be worse, or oh, like why are you upset? And I find that in some situations when I'm in a good mood and I see people that are down, like your first reaction is to be like, oh man, like come on,
Just cheer up.
like sometimes your first reaction is like
Yeah.
it's exhausting.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
why are you sad? Like
over it.
don't be sad right now. Yeah, but the ability to really like try to get in somebody else's mind state, not only does that allow you to like better treat them better, but it allows them to treat you better. And so like everybody talks about how like the country is so divided. It's like, I mean, if people cared about having some empathy instead of like being like deceitful in the way that they're interacting with people, then a lot of that it's so simple. All you gotta do is be empathetic and have critical thinking and world peace.
Yeah,
Goodness.
dude, that sounds pretty
just
easy
simple.
to me. Yeah.
Get your shit together.
No, but it's
God, I should be president.
one of the problems I find is that it comes from people who don't have depression, and they might be also hardworking people. Oftentimes there's this unhealthy thinking they develop where it's like, well, I had plenty of things to be sad about when I was your age, or this, that, but I didn't have time. I didn't have time for that. I had to make sure there was food on the table, or there's this, and that. And they start to extrapolate that, look, I'm a hardworking person, so I work hard to also not be depressed. They feel like it's within their just control. It's just something that they can do, and so they're like, hey, you're just not you're always depressed. And look, I'm not saying it's not chemical, blah blah, but like, have you tried at least doing this, or have you tried? And it's not helpful because it makes like that's where I feel like they're not injecting empathy. Because who wants to be depressed?
No.
Who wants to sit around and wallow?
For sure. But I do think that there are like, it's a spectrum, right? Like there are people that occasionally become depressed that don't have depression, that like be like working out and eating. First of all, working out and eating healthy makes everybody feel better, but like not makes everybody feel good. Like yes, you'd rather live your life working out and eating healthy than eating terribly and never doing any exercise.
Yeah.
That's the reason why it's so dumb too, because nobody's sitting here being like, no, you know what I tried was eating like fast food and like
yeah.
but so I to a certain extent I kind of understand their perspective of like, if you don't really have depression and you're just like in a bad state, or like it's like a mild form, like sometimes that can be helpful, but it's like you haven't taken the time to actually understand the other person's like problem. If that's like the first thing that you're like throwing at them,
even
like,
if you believe it, you can't approach them like that.
People get depressed. Well, it's like you don't know what that person's depression is. Like it's not like people get depressed and they're like, you know what, I'm not gonna do anything about
This
it.
is a mood.
I was gonna.
Yeah, this is a mood.
Yeah.
I like this.
But like I think that because it's like the depression is what is keeping them from being able to eat healthy and do exercise and like do stuff that works. But I don't know. I feel bad. Yeah, it's a weird.
I feel like what people don't understand is that like when you're talking to someone with depression, when you're not experiencing depression, or maybe you're different places on the spectrum, then you're speaking from the privilege of your position, and
Exactly.
you are very familiar with how you work and what works for you and how you think. And we extrapolate our personal experiences and apply them to others when we give advice and we talk to others. We also, of course, make observations based on, the kind of people we see and how different people deal with different things. And oftentimes we, as people, again, because of that, it's probably an evolutionary trait, us being able to recognize patterns. That's what makes us so different to all the other animals. I think our pattern recognition led us to our sentience and understanding of the cosmos and everything is just because we see patterns and we notice them and everything, but not every person is really a scientist. And I think the average person, they only have a handful of experiences. But so these are all case studies. Everything you come across in your life is essentially a case study. Like, oh, this person has depression and this is what it's like. Maybe many other people have a very similar thing, but it's just a single case study. And if you have 5 or 6 people, you could say like, hey, I know 12 people with depression and this worked for all of them. So it'll work for you too, man. Maybe you're not trying hard enough. It's like, that's 12 out of 7+ billion people on this planet. You wouldn't, in the realm of science, you wouldn't say like these 12 case studies just apply to everyone. No, the sample size is too small. And as individuals, our understanding of the world will always come from a very limited sample size. And empathy doesn't just mean feeling bad for everyone. Just empathy, I think, is also a recognition of your own ignorance and the limitations of your scope of knowledge. That's where empathy is too. Sure. It's like I guess it's being humble. That's what I was saying about being humble earlier. But yeah, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think it's detaching. I brought this up recently in another conversation. I don't know why I always feel like I need to bring that up, because I feel like when I'm repeating myself, I'm like, is this becoming just like a thing?
Anyway. I do the same thing. When I was younger, I used to think, this is a small digression, when I was younger, I remember thinking like, what if in the future they discover like a way, like everything we say is sound waves and they dissipate and they become smaller and redder and smaller, but what if in the future we're going to be able to detect all sorts of waves, even of the lowest frequencies, and we'll be able to hear what people said hundreds of years ago. We'll just be able to detect it, right? So I go around, I used for like a long period of time as a teen, I would go around just saying things that sounded like good, and if I said something fucked up, I would immediately say, of course I'm just joking. Even if I'm alone in the room, like, I'm just joking. That was a bad joke.
First of all, it's funny that like young you not only thought that was a thing, but thought that like the things that you were saying were gonna be like bad compared to like Nazis.
Yeah. People are sitting there like trying to find out, what did Rav say when he was 16? Yeah, it's really.
Oh, he said he didn't like somebody very much.
What?
Well, let's put that up against Hitler.
Yeah, he's pretty fucked up. We got to make sure we include this in our studies. Yeah, in our journal. Yeah. Anyway, sorry, that was a little digression.
No, it's cool. I already forgot.
Well, you were about to say that you're like, you're talking about repeating yourself, and that's why I brought it up. So I made sure that I always framed things in a different way when I spoke with people and never repeated myself, so that on the off chance they're listening to me, they're not like, this guy's got this fucking thing memorized and he's just constantly saying it over and over again.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know why that matters, but like just having like original thoughts all the time, just riffing like life. That's the other thing, is like some people really like think about what they want to say and then say it, and I'm just a fucking idiot. I start talking and then I figure things out. Yeah. I always was like that. I'm very much like Michael on The Office. It's just like, that's why people think you're dumb, because you are just like tight-roping conversation.
Yeah, you trust your mouth to somehow lead your brain. Yeah.
But so like in this situation, I guess what I was trying to say is that there's this, when I was in school, we talked about, I had this class about critical thinking, about, it was like a sociology class where they how people thought and like why people believe certain things, and like got caught up in cults and stuff. And one thing this guy like had done, I don't think it was Tocqueville, but like this guy had written about American people, and he talked about how Americans are so connected to their opinions and beliefs as like the parts of their identity, that discourse is almost impossible, because, and this is like, this dude's talking about it, I think in like the 50s, like 40, like years and years ago, like discourse is almost impossible. If it was Tocqueville, it was like the 1800s, but discourse is almost impossible, because like when you're trying to tell somebody like, the belief that you have I disagree with, they're like, you dislike me as a person? Fuck you.
Yeah. It's very personal. Yeah.
So I think that that's like part of what empathy gives you. It gives you the ability to disconnect those beliefs and thought. It allows you to disconnect yourself from thinking like yourself a little bit. You know, like it it shows you that there's so many other ways to be and think and see things that you realize that your perspective is not like the end all. So if somebody is like calling out the things that you believe, then it doesn't mean that you're a shitty person.
Yeah.
It just means that like that thing is wrong and you can change it if it is, you know.
Yeah,
But
and if you overcome a
I think that's
hardship,
part of it.
if you overcome like a really tough thing that someone else is going through, our natural instinct is want to help them by drawing from our own personal experiences. But you have to remember that whatever worked for you might not work for them. That, like, again, you're a single case study, and reapply that. Yeah, just kind of this other person is not you. And you're speaking from a place of privilege. And you might have gone through a worse version, by whatever metric you want to use, than what this person is going through. But that doesn't mean by default you like know what's best for them or what's good for them. You've overcome it. That's a different kind of privilege to someone who hasn't. And everyone's experiences are going to be different, you know? I feel like happiness, being content, or even empathy. I feel like even empathy to a degree is a privilege, you know? I feel like it's a lot easier to develop empathy when you don't have to constantly be on your toes. You know, if you're growing up in an environment where it's like fight or flight, constantly being tested, you know, then perhaps that is just, it's not in your biological interest at that point to develop empathy. So I think
for sure, I think that's why it's so hard. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. But if you do have that empathy and you see that like someone else doesn't have that empathy, I think this is where you need to apply that empathy that you have and
just punch them in the face.
Yeah, and just like they need to know better.
Apply it to their face.
Yeah, just because you know something also doesn't make you a teacher, you know? Like it's not your responsibility to teach people. If you have, you know, with great power comes great responsibility. That doesn't mean a responsibility of using that power, applying that power in a way of like sharing it with someone else. Applying that power, applying empathy might mean knowing when to shut the fuck up, knowing when to not talk, just listen. And that's a huge thing. Empathy comes in a million different forms. And
yeah, it's mostly about just like having the mind state, like trying to get yourself in the other person's mind state and perspective, right?
Right.
Any actions after that are different. They're going to be different for every perspective, but the important thing is to like give an honest approach to trying to understand where the other person is coming from. And I think that's like the hardest part. Seems like people have this obsession, and I think it must, I don't know, I'm not a biologist, I don't know about evolution that well, but it must be like really like strong in us, because I think like politicians like take advantage of it and use it for their own personal gain. This feeling of like being taken advantage of by other people in society, like this idea that like yes, there are people that are going to complain about being sad, and they're going to try to take advantage of people's sympathies, or empathy, to profit off of that, or to like, you know, being empathetic is difficult also because people can take advantage of that empathy and profit off of that. So like people are like obsessed, and maybe that's what you were saying before about kind of how empathy evolutionarily doesn't make sense if you're trying to survive all the time. Like you can't have empathy. So we have this like thing where like with politics, people are like constantly worried about like immigrants like taking everybody's jobs when they're coming here, or like they're worried about like people just wanting attention when they're sad, and they're worried about all these things. It's like, yeah, like maybe there are people doing that, but the world where like you cut all of those people, you cut everybody off because you're scared of like the few people that are going to like do a negative thing to you, is way worse than a world where you like get taken advantage of occasionally,
Yeah.
but like most people are healthier and happier.
Yeah.
And like there are limits to everything, of course. You're not just like gonna give everybody like your entire life because you have empathy. That's not what empathy is necessarily. But I don't know.
No, I see
it's
what you're
crazy to
saying.
me
It's
how much.
absolutely true. And I mean, also being, just to clarify, empathy doesn't mean, in my opinion, empathy is not selflessness. It's just a
No, yeah.
redefining of self, you know? That's all it really is. It's not just completely removing yourself from everything. No, it's just placing yourself in another person's shoes. And I think a lot of people struggle with that because they think, well, if I were in this position, I wouldn't do that, right? But it's putting yourself in another person's shoes, not just for that moment, but trying to apply the scope of their experiences from what little you may know. So for instance, like saying, oh man, I really need to go to this pharmacy and get this like very specific thing, but every time I've gone there, the lady behind the counter said something racist to me or something like that, right? And it's just, it triggered me, and I could never pick things up, and I've left. And I've had like 8 experiences like this month. I went in there 8 times, all 8 times that happened. And I might have had a set of experience where that's never happened to me. And I could, so like me saying, well, if I were in your shoes, I need to remove that, like my body, myself, my experiences. Like, yeah, because if I was really you, if I was going right there right now by my, like as me, I wouldn't have those issues. I wouldn't have those troubles. I wouldn't have the same set of experiences. So placing yourself in someone else's shoes, means removing the knowledge that you've acquired in your life, right? It's understanding that this other person has a different set of experiences and different set of information that he learned through his experiences or whatever, right? And I know that sounds probably kind of convoluted, but it just literally means it's not you. Like when it's empathy, it's not you. It's just imagining being someone else and having like the certain experiences. If someone's if a person is very distrusting of other people, maybe you get to know them and you find out like, oh wow, they've had a lot of moments in their life where they got betrayed by people they trusted, and it's just the unfortunate reality is that it's just their environment was such where that's what people do, that's to survive, you know? And so convincing people that like that life isn't like that is not going to work by just saying it. You just have to be a counterforce in their life. That's how you apply the empathy there. Be a counterforce to that. Inject some nuance into their experiences rather than telling them that this is not what life's like. Not everyone's like this, because that doesn't always help. One thing I was gonna say, do you mind if I take a pee break?
I do.
Okay, good. Well, you can. This will probably be cut out, this portion, or you could say something, entertain the people.
No entertainment. Oh, that's cool how it lights up. Before I forget it, I am just gonna say this real quick. If you take, it's like getting mad at a blind person for not being able to drive a car because you can drive a car. Like nobody would ever get mad at them for that, because you understand that their experience does not allow them to drive a car. Or like somebody with a sprained ankle not being able to do something with you, like, or somebody like that's completely different not being able to be the way, I don't know. Look, now that Rav's gone, what you need to do is you need to join Soupcord, because Soupcord is the new wave. Cereal is not soup. Cereal is a grain that you then put into milk, or you don't put into milk. When you put it into milk, it doesn't become soup. Look up on Google, just search definition of soup, and then search is cereal soup, and it already populates. It tells you that cereal is not soup. It's insane to think that cereal is soup. Is our potato soup? No, you have to have a soup for it to be a soup. Anyway, also none of this grits or oatmeal, like mac and cheese isn't soup. Just because you put it in boiling water and then like put sauce on it doesn't make it soup. All I'm saying is, for more riveting conversations like this, go to Soupcord. I don't know what the link would be, but People will give it to you. I'm sure it's on my account. Here's a joke. I made this one up a long time ago, and I wanted to submit it to Laffy Taffy, but I never did. Where does a joke go when it's thirsty? To the punchline. Perfect. On point.
What misinformation have you been
Hey,
feeding
Rap.
them?
None
Okay.
whatsoever.
I was, as I went to the restroom, I just wanted to say like at least one more thing about empathy. It's something that I came to a conclusion not too long ago, but empathy can also mean not taking it personally when someone else doesn't have empathy. If they say something to you, it's easy to be hurt and be like, well, that's not fair. I'm being empathetic with them and they're not being empathetic back. But empathy is not expecting someone to give you something back. It's not like empathy is not doesn't mean that you're expecting someone to reward you for being empathetic. And if you're truly empathetic, then you should be able to not take whatever they say personally, because you'll be like, okay, well, they're not being empathetic because they haven't been in a position where empathy is a thing that they acquired to the extent that I would like them to, but it is what it is. And, it's not about me. It's more so about them. So I shouldn't be hurt by what they say. Easier said than done, but it's just something I've been trying to apply to myself with in certain exchanges that I've had with people, where they kind of lashed out and vented, and I took it personally, like, well, no, it's not about me, it's about them.
Yeah, that's like it's way more complicated and difficult, and that's why it's so hard for people to accomplish. And that's why, like, I also have attempted to and consistently failed to not speak about things in a tone that makes it seem like I'm saying ultimate truths, because like I have no, like, these are just thoughts that I've had about it, but like in no means, because it is so complicated and difficult, and it's an ongoing process to attempt to reach for an ideal rather than a thing that you master and just like figure out, right? Like it's just, because you have to balance actually not being taken advantage of in some cases, or not being abused. Like you're not gonna give an abuser so much empathy that they just can continue abusing you. And I know that that's not like what empathy is, but if you were to react the same way to somebody that's an abuser as you would to another not normal, but like another like less harmful human being, then that can be detrimental to your life. So there's like,
I mean, ideally in those situations you extend the empathy to the whole situation, right? In the whole situation, so to the victim and the the person who's behind the wrongdoing. I think the way to look at it is, for instance, let's say person A kills person B. You can be empathetic with person B and their family and like what they're gonna they've gone through, but you can also feel empathy for person A. Doesn't mean they're like they're both equally right, they're both equally wrong, or anything like that. It just means that it's more so empathy should actually help you steer you away from binary thinking, where it's like these were good people and this person is a bad person and that's all it is. It's like, no, it's unfortunate. What happened is unfortunate, and there's more forces than that person's just decision to kill that person that were in play. His biology, his environment, his circumstances growing up, that person's, all of that stuff is an unfortunate piece of this puzzle. And this good person was unfortunately, it wasn't their fault at all that what happened. It's just, it was out of their control. But it's just understanding that maybe the amount of control we have is limited. And I mean, I'm not very good at speaking to these kinds of things because I'm a determinist. So it's it's kind of my kind of thinking is a little bit unfalsifiable. So that's why I don't like to go into too much. But I do think whether you're a determinist or not, it's impossible to deny that like there is a biological component to how who we are, not just visually, but behavior wise. And then of course the way the nurture plays a part very much so in who we are and how we see patterns in people who are, brought up in squalor and unfortunate circumstances versus how certain people who are middle class, upper middle class, and then some people who are very, very rich. And there are patterns, and this is where the part of us stereotyping comes into place, as our ability to recognize patterns. So all of those things play a part to a certain extent. So as far as I see it is, the moment a person is born, there's already a lot of them in there of who they are, and their environment is already going to dictate a lot of the other stuff, and their environment is out of their control. That doesn't mean just where, like, the location they're born, but all the people they're going to run into, the people they're going to go to school with, and everything is so out of their control that by the time they finally have control over their lives, they're already shaped into the kind of person that they are without much input.
Yeah, I mean, I think, but that is, a lot of that is input. I think that's one of the, sorry, did I cut you off?
No, I finished. There's just lag.
I think that's one of the interesting, I feel like that's one of the interesting things that a lot of people miss in terms of like personal responsibility. That the idea that like you can view society from a macro level, and see the trends and see society as an organism, that interacts with itself, and certain outcomes come out of those interactions and those conditions, without like taking away personal accountability. Because at the end of the day, if you are deterministic and you think that all outcomes are already like determined by like a super complex number of variables that take into account biology and conditions and how your brain reacts to things, like, even if you believe that, and you believe that there, like, free will isn't a thing, in the moment, society, like, you can't make decisions based off of that, because that doesn't make any sense, right? Like, you can't. So like, if somebody is going around murdering a whole bunch of people, you can both view the macro conditions that caused that to happen, and not. I think it makes it a healthier system, because you know that person can't be allowed to continue murdering people, regardless of, like, if you take away their like, whether or not you think it's their fault because of all these conditions. You know that from a societal standpoint, the best thing to do is to pull him out of a situation where he or she they can continue murdering people, and like put them in a situation where they not only will stop murdering people, but maybe can change the way that they think enough to where they don't want to murder people anymore, so like I feel like you can take personal responsibility for your actions, and even smaller things. It's like there are systemic issues that cause outcomes to happen. Those systemic issues need to be addressed, while at the same time people in individual situations need to take accountability for their own actions. But the problem is that you get situations where people assume that because you're pointing out systemic outcomes that are causing these systemic issues that are causing these outcomes, then you're saying that, like, people don't have any personal responsibility. And that's like the opposite of what's true. I think in a lot of those situations you find that those people have like way more personal responsibility than like, I mean, like, to take a really simple example, than like a person born in like the upper class that just like stumbles into like everything that they've ever done, like doesn't actually ever take personal responsibility because they have such a huge safety net that they don't have to take personal responsibility for anything. And I think that plays back into like people like having this weird thing where they think people are like taking advantage of them, or the weird thing where they think like have you tried exercising and eating? It's like, no, like most people
Joe
take
Rogan.
personal responsibility. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like most people take personal responsibility for their actions because they have to live with their
Yeah.
actions. Like, you know, like you don't sit around going like, oh, this shit is terrible. At some point it comes back to you, you
Yeah.
know? And maybe not everyone takes like the best personal responsibility, but I'm just saying you can live in a society where we see those deterministic outcomes and still expect people to act in a certain way.
Yeah,
or be a
exactly.
certain
And
way, you know?
the only way in which I think it's healthy to apply determinism here was just to say that there's like a domino effect that biology, a person's biology and circumstances at birth and early childhood have where it is out of that person's control, you know?
Exactly.
This person, by the time they become an adult, haven't been in charge of their lives and who they are. That doesn't mean like, that's it, let's just forgive everyone for everything. But I do think being able to just say like, well, that person's bad is first of all, it's not empathetic. It's overprivileged and just ignorant to say it. And it's like, and to punish those people is also a decision that comes from people who are people of privilege. So I don't believe like prisons are like a good system for helping people, because it's not rehabilitation. It is just punishment. And also in America, because you guys have the 13th Amendment, it's extortion.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess that's kind of what I'm saying, is that like determinism can't be used as a philosophy to live your life by in terms of like I don't have any free will, so I'm not gonna do it.
No,
it's like nihilism,
no,
you know?
exactly. I'm not a nihilist. You know, I'm a determinist in scientific terms, as in like I only apply my determinism when I make observations about things, but not like when I make life decisions. Like, oh, who cares what I decide? Whatever happens will happen.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not my fault.
So that's kind of what I was like. I was getting at, is that like that is like the great way to use like the deterministic outcomes is to view it like that, to where like you don't like in like I don't know if draconian is like the right way to say it, but you don't see the person as like the only actor and like blame them for everything as a society. You don't see the person that steals or murders and say like that person is like inherently evil and is made of different stuff than these people. You see that deterministic outcome and you say like, and you find a solution that helps society and helps that person, rather than like be like, fuck that person, let's either murder them or like put them in a cell for like the rest of their lives, you know? Or you see like communities falling apart because of like systems that were put in place in laws or like the way that we are, and you don't think like those people are just like dumb or like those people are just bad people. You go, no, like if this community can do well, why is this community not doing well? And then you fix the circumstances, or you attempt to, like everybody attempts to like fix those circumstances so those communities can. I completely agree. I feel like that's the way like the determinism actually like really helps society, and I think that's like part of the empathy, right? It's like part of like understanding.
It's recognizing that your set of views and what is right and what is wrong are informed by your experiences and your privilege.
And you're not normal.
Yeah, exactly.
Like you're not normal.
Yeah, exactly. You're not the barometer for what is good and bad. You're just an outcome of your experiences in biology. So, it's just determinism is supposed to humble you. That's it. There you go, guys. Just apply determinism to your empathy, and that's it. You're good. You're good to go. No, but it's like, you know, in America, was it more than half people who go to prison reoffend when they come out, you know, as opposed to like, you know,
it's a terrible system.
Yeah, terrible system. And then in Finland, it's a very different system where it's fewer people reoffend, but it's a lot more lax, and it is framed more so to rehabilitate people, you know, they can study during that time, and they can go out they can leave prison and apply for jobs and everything while they're still serving out their time and do different things. And it seems to be put together in a way where it's like, okay, no, these people could get better. These people can still get better. It doesn't give up on them. But even then, it's like, you know, I don't know what is right, what is wrong. If it were up to me, because I come from school of, I majored in psychology. So for me, you know, my solution to everything will always be like, oh, well, mental health. It needs to be appreciated in a way that it clearly is not being appreciated now. And instead of throwing everybody into the same place, like, you know, you don't have like an oncology department and you send everyone there, like even if they have a sore throat. It's like, no, it's just, we have specific areas in the hospital for different kinds of things. And I think we need some sort of rehabilitation services for, or facilities for various mental health conditions, pathologies, things like that. And of course, beyond that, because that's just a reaction thing. That's like replacing prisons with something else is still only saying like, well, instead of this thing, we should use a different bandage. Obviously, there's systemic issues, as you were saying, and everything that lead to a lot of these things. Biology does play a big part in who we are, but the nurture part and our experiences and everything very much informs who we are. And so if there are, you know, it's weird. If there are neighborhoods where there's just more likely to be, there's more crime there, instead of us looking at it as like, what's the skin color of those people in those neighborhoods, is more so asking like, what are they doing in those neighborhoods to begin with? Why do we have neighborhoods like that? And why are they populated with a specific certain type of people? Just acknowledging, I think, historical aspect, because that's another thing that people don't take into account. A lot of people think of environment and circumstances as like a thing that is present, but it is drenched in history and
genetics.
And genetics, exactly. So you cannot remove systemic racism.
In terms of sorry, just in case it's confusing, in terms of like trauma apparently being like passed down through genetics,
yes,
not in terms of exactly people's genetics.
Yeah. No, I understand what you're saying. Yeah. So it's just like and then sort of seeing like, well, how do we deal with that? Because yes, how we react to people who are hurt by the environment and biology and everything is one way to treat it, but what is the long-term solution? Do we just constantly react to, and like, we cannot just take a reactionary approach. We need to also have a proactive approach in reducing the amount of cases. And the way to do it, again, through empathy, is to address these systemic things from the ground up.
Yeah, and one of the crazy things too is like how much not only historical context isn't taken into account, but when you do take it into account, how much like deliberate fucking with isn't taken into account. Yeah. Like people just are so content with, and you know what? Like for not historical context, but for like the since we were talking about determinism and everything like that, like I can still say like fuck Mitch McConnell. Like that's like a very like popular thing to say, but like regardless of like the outcomes of that person's life that has led him to there, he's in a position of power and he's fucking people over. Like I can very much dislike that man while still understanding that like
that doesn't mean but it doesn't mean
that man is a disease. You know what I'm saying? Right. It's like a disease. Like that shit is a disease.
Yeah, you can't.
Is how I feel. Like, not like he doesn't deserve to live or anything. No, like,
it doesn't mean let's go kill him.
What he's doing is terrible.
Right. It doesn't mean we should go kill him. But empathy is also holding people accountable. It doesn't mean forgiving them for everything all the time and just like, because that's also stupid. And that's the problem with, I think, a lot of the people who are more, I think, extreme right and alt-right, like far-right kind of stuff, is that people think like, well, then what, you want us to just forgive everyone? And I've even seen people on the left say these kinds of things like, well, I don't get it. Like, we're supposed to be sympathetic of all kinds of things. No, it's just, it's weird that anytime you propose a new idea to people to replace their binary one, they think it's a different binary system. And the whole point is like, no, what I'm saying is binary doesn't work. And people do want binary solutions. People like binary solutions because even though, exactly, they're simpler. Because even though we are people of pattern and we're complicated animals when compared to the other animals that walk the earth, we still most of the time take the path of least resistance when it comes to things, and that includes our perceptions and conclusions that we draw. And so for a lot of people, it's just easy. It's easier to be like, I think racism fucked up. I have a bumper sticker that says fuck you racism, and it's like that's great, but it doesn't mean like the debate isn't like you either are racist or you aren't, and like, well, I'm not racist, so I'm on the right side of history. It's like it's deeper than that. It's how are you applying your not racism in your life that is actually serving benefit to the cause at hand.
Well, then on top of that, it's like taking, or on that point, is like, it's more of that like disconnecting that from your identity.
Yes.
Because like the idea of thinking that you're not racist is like, doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Like it's not about, like you said, it's not binary. It's not like you are racist or you're not racist. I mean, that's what I think a lot of people talk about with like anti-racism, is like, it's not being the opposite of being racist isn't being not racist.
Yeah.
It's like disconnecting yourself from your actions enough to like recognize when your actions are racist, right? So then you can address those things instead of having this identity of I'm not racist, and then somebody's like, well, actually, like that thing that you just said or did is kind of racist, and then you're like, well, I'm not a racist person, so there's no way that the thing that I said or did was racist, because as you heard from me telling you, I'm not a racist person.
Yeah, I have.
You know
I listen to hip hop, by the way. I hope you. I think that should be noted. Yeah. And
I love Eminem.
Eminem's great. He's so good, isn't he?
But like, yeah, I think you're right about that in terms of that stuff.
And for the same reason, also, I think guilt. Like, you know, that's the other thing I've seen on the other side of it, is just a lot of people who are like, man, like I fuck, I'm white, you know, I'm carry the blood of the worst kind of people in the world. And it's also not taking responsibility, as it's just, you're bringing it all back to yourself again. That's not empathy. You feeling guilty is a selfish thing if there's nothing that comes out of it, you know, and vocalizing it does not serve anyone any good. Not you, not anyone else. No person who's suffering at the hand of systemic racism looks at a white person and goes, that says like, the white person goes like, man, I hate being white. Whites are the worst. Colonials, right? And you know, a person of color who's affected by systemic racism doesn't look at that person and go, that makes me feel good. That's making my situation better. That's improving something for me. No. So, not taking any responsibility and just feeling guilty and still not applying it in any way is just like two very similar things. They're both unempathetic non-solutions to whatever it is that you're trying to pretend or say you care about. And yeah. So I think we've solved all the riddles of life at this point, of like current society. Well, actually, I was gonna ask you for some optimism from Square, because I know you studied philosophy, you majored in philosophy. Who's your favorite philosopher?
I'm not a good enough student to have like a favorite philosopher. I remember really liking Hegel.
Yeah.
Back in the day, I don't know why Google heard Hegel. I was like, what?
It's like your version of Siri is just hey Hegel,
or Hegel, or whatever. But I mean, it was above my head. Honestly, I wasn't the greatest philosophy student, but I just really liked not necessarily the conclusions. There was a lot of, I think, bad conclusions that came out of some of the German stuff in that era, but just the fact that it was like much more open to the irrational nature of reality.
Was it phenomenology or whatever, right? The study of like society over periods of time and stuff like that, or what in particular?
Well, I think with Kant, if I remember correctly, and I'm gonna sound like an idiot, I don't even tell people that I studied philosophy because I know so little nowadays, or
Well,
even
you
like
see, you,
remember
you
so
you've
little.
prefaced it with some humble energy, so people won't be angry if you fuck up
Yeah, they
completely now.
better not be because I have no idea what I'm talking about. But if I remember, like just reading recently, like some stuff on like Wikipedia, like the phenomenology stuff, kind of like Kant went into that, like the idea of like the 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 world, the noumenal and phenomenal world
Mhm.
that like I don't remember if it was him or not, but that you can perceive in terms of like the world that you perceive and the world that's outside of your senses, that whether or not that world exists,
Yeah.
um in a very probably not great manner. That I think is really interesting and cool, and I think that's kind of like, I mean, I've tied that back to empathy in some
Hmm.
ways because it's like the world that you perceive as the real world, but then
It's just a
try to like
microcosm.
connect to that other person's,
Yeah.
that yeah, try to connect to that other person's perception of what reality is. And to some people the world doesn't exist outside of their perception of the world. They don't, other people's perceptions don't play a role, and I felt that that was kind of like
The opposite of
my life
empathy.
for a long time. Yeah, but
The convenience
I
of
think
it.
what was cool about a lot of those German philosophers at the time was the idea of the sublime and like irrational
Mm.
reality, and like everything was like wrapped up in itself, so it was like kind of hard to like start learning. Like for example, if you learned like somebody like Spinoza, let's say, if
Hmm.
if I remember correctly, or like a lot of the enlightenment philosophers, it would start with like axioms, right? So you'd be like, this is true, this is true, this is true. Do you believe that these things are true? If you believe these things are true, then like this is also, this must be also true, and then this must be also true, and this must be also
Right.
true. And then they would build their entire philosophy off of like, it's like logic math,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
That's what
yeah, yeah.
philosophy is. Yeah, yeah.
Because A is that and B is this, that means we can extrapolate from A and B that C will also be that. Yeah, it's just logical thing. It's basically trying to apply, yeah, logical math, as you put it.
Yeah, yeah, but a lot of like the 19th century, I think 19th century German philosophers is like this circle of logic. And I know it sounds dumb because it's like, oh, you got like circular logic, but what it is like, it's like you don't like jump in at the bottom floor. You like start learning their philosophy,
Yeah.
and then the more of it you learn, the more of it makes sense in
Yeah.
terms of like, and so then you get to like the sublime, which is like from an artistic perspective, it's like when you have that painting that like you look at that isn't a shape, but
Mhm.
or like it's not a depiction of anything, but you look at it and then you like feel something.
Right.
It's like that connection to the whole of reality that's irrational.
Mhm.
So like I think that's kind, if I remember correctly, at least the perception that I got
Mhm.
when I was learning about it is like that's kind of what that philosophy is
Mhm.
like. And so it was always kind of over my head, but I kind of like that
Well,
idea of like not starting at the
those
bottom.
German philosophers were not very good at writing straightforward stuff. Also, the
No, dude, they
translations are
just put
difficult.
words. Well, because they just like in German, you can just be like, okay, I want to make a word up,
30
and
syllables
so what I'm
long.
gonna do,
Yeah, yeah.
I'm gonna put 30 words and
Yeah,
just like
yeah.
cram them together, and then that's a new word. So like every philosopher that you read, you had to like learn an entirely new like
It's just a vocabulary.
definition system.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
vocabulary.
just a
Yeah.
whole new vocabulary. Once you crack the vocabulary, then you can start making sense of like what they're trying to say. I like philosophy that makes it sound like it's proposing an answer, and it ends with hypocrisy. So like Zizek is I think a fun example of
Oh
someone
yeah.
who's like, he'll say one thing, you'll be like, wow, that's true, and then like he'll immediately say something more convincing or just as convincing that puts a hole in what he just said. Like it's just like
Yeah.
I think it's an outcome
Well, I
of
think
how he just rambles and stuff, right? So it's just
I
inevitable.
think he's pretty Hegelian, or I think
Very
he's pretty into
Hegelian for
Hegel or
sure.
Hegel,
Yeah, he is.
whatever, however you pronounce it
Oh, and
nowadays. I've
what's
already
the name?
forgotten.
The French 20th century philosopher that he studied under. God, I'm so fucking bad. But it's another student of like, Hegelian thought and Freudian as well. Psychoanalysis plays a big part, I think, in Zizek's philosophy, which I'm not even
Before
sure
we
what
go
he
any
called it.
further. Wait, what?
Saving money by customizing car insurance with Liberty Mutual.
We needed that. Is it Heigl?
Pronouncenames.com.
Catherine Heigl?
Yeah, but that's Catherine. I wanted to know how to.
Hegel?
Yeah, Hegel. That's gotta be right.
You're trying to get the pronunciation right? Hegel?
Yeah, because I've already forgotten, but it is Hegel.
Welcome back to Carneades.org. Today we're going to be continuing with our series 4 weeks of famous philosophers. In this video, we're going to be looking at George Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel.
Yeah, we did
but he
it.
said it with an American accent. If he asked Zizek how he pronounced it, he says Hegel. So
Yeah, but I'm good with saying it the way that Americans say it correctly instead of
Okay.
trying to say Hegel. But I was saying Hegel. That's good. I didn't remember it incorrectly.
no, it's yeah, Hegel. That's
Let's
right.
cut that out. Let's just cut
Let's
that whole
cut the
thing
whole
out.
part
I was just
out.
saying it right.
Yeah, so the reason I think I'm attracted to, I guess hypocrisy is the wrong way to put it. I'm attracted to contradiction because I think I don't like the idea of something being a truth, like unless it's a scientific observation of something that doesn't have a consciousness, right? Anything else, like all the whole human experience cannot, from our perspective, I think can never be summarized in axioms accurately. I think because then we're applying logic and rationality from the outside looking in.
Right.
You know,
That's
not
like the
looking
entire
in.
that's like the entire kind of backlash of, I don't know if it's German romanticism is what they call it at the time, where like they were just like, you Enlightenment British rationalists are stupid.
Yeah.
Like you guys are like seeing like such a small part of reality and think that that's like all of you think you can just explain all of reality based on like your tiny little your dumb logic rules.
Yeah.
And I always thought that was interesting, but I do think like there is the benefit of, like we were talking about with like determinism, like that doesn't come out to anything, but using rationality as a tool to make society better or to work on things, and like science has clearly like made the world a more, I don't know, I mean definitely a better place. Less people die because of science, like stuff like that. So I do think there's like a level of its use, but yeah, I think when it's like when rationality is like a religion almost, or like science is a religion almost, that's when you kind of lose.
But even those
connection to the
people,
fact that-
those people use it irrationally. I think those people who use rationality, they do it because they think. I think
It's
a
a
lot
means
of
of
people
control.
I think a lot of people are just frustrated with certain things that are happening, and obviously society is always going to evolve, and there's always going to be new things and changes, and people a lot of times are pissed off, and a lot of these intellectuals, I want to say pseudo-intellectuals, but also intellectuals, people who are widely accepted as intellectuals.
Yeah, we're pseudo-intellectuals.
Yeah, we're pseudo-intellectuals. We're not like, this is not our realm. We're just observers,
No, no.
right?
Yeah.
But in accepted intellectuals, I think, like such as Jordan Peterson, I think a lot of people like that use rationality.
He's a pseudo-intellectual.
Yeah,
too,
okay,
though.
good. But I'm saying widely accepted as intellectual.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I think they use rationality as an excuse to just, like spout like aggressive rhetoric, or kind of a rhetoric that they'll have an opinion and they'll find a way to make rationality the vehicle that will help arrive to their opinion, and because we're humans, and as we were discussing, there's not much that is rational about us. At least it's hard for us to dictate human rationality. Being human, it is kind of hard to take ourselves out of that experience. So we can always manipulate rationality or truth or whatever it is in observations and case studies to fit a narrative that we want to drive. And I think a lot of the people now are aggressively rational, where they pretend to not be offensive. They're not saying anything offensive. Look, I'm just extrapolating these conclusions from via sound logic through just like, look, here's an example. How do you explain this and that and this and this and that? And that's where I don't like rationality I feel like it's just being used as a tool. I don't even know if that's really rationality.
Yeah.
It's selective rationality, you know?
But I mean, I think that there's like levels to it, right? Like, first of all, there's like a lot of dishonest actors, especially in the American media landscape, where it's like people that are like purposefully manipulating things, making arguments in order to sell books or like to sell ideas. And then there are people that like they're using rationality, but it's not actually reasonable. Like, if you have anybody like a Ben Shapiro, like 90% of what he says, if you have like 10 seconds to look it up, just doesn't make any sense. Like, it's not
No.
like there's no rationality there.
No.
But I do think that you're right. Like, I think one of the big, it's kind of almost ironic in terms of what's happened with like the Republican Party in the United States, and like even more so with the religious right in the United States. It's that it feels like like whenever what's his name said that God was dead or whatever, and he was talking about kind of like how Judeo-Christian, I don't think they called it that at the time, but like religious morals were going to be broken down by reason, because so then you were going to have moral relativity and nothing was going to matter. Like, I think that's what he was scared of, if I remember correctly. But anyway, people have been scared of this for a while. It's kind of ironic that like that's what's happened to the right, the Christian right in this country, because you're right. What's happening is that you have these dishonest people, and some of them may be honest, but most of them I think are dishonest. They're creating these arguments that are based in reason, that are all like, they're all from personal, they're trying to like get something out of those things. So they have this idea of what they want to sell or what they want to say, and so they create these arguments. And then what they're doing is they're creating like a more like a rational relativism in our country, where people start believing that the truth is like whatever you can make an argument for, like a bad faith argument for. So then you get all these people that are like, well, that's not my truth. This is like, though your facts are different from my facts, but it's really because you have all these dishonest people that are pretending that like reason is their ultimate. They're using like this relativism to trick Republicans or convince the Republicans, especially like the Christian right, into like believing that like there is no way to know like that reality is like the way that you feel about it. And I'm not saying that those are the only people that are feeling that way.
No, I mean,
but
for
it's
sure
this weird phenomenon. It's this weird phenomenon that we've seen, and it's to the point where it's like, that's what's missing. Honestly, I think that's what's missing on the right, is like this broader empathy for understanding other people's outcomes. And I think the empathy is where like it's like the type of relativism that allows you to coexist, and then the reason, this rationality that's not really like, doesn't make a lot of sense, and it's disconnected from empathy, is what allows you to think that everything you want to believe is like the truth.
Yeah.
And all these people are idiots, so you go out and like seek the argument that best fits your perspective, because you don't even realize that there are other perspectives, and you think every other perspective is ridiculous and out of touch.
Yeah.
And it is that binary thing that you're talking about, and that may have not made any sense, but I couldn't really like put it in words
I get it.
wanted to. But that's something that I've like noticed. It's this weird like,
for sure. I mean, it's
relativism.
what's funny is that just a lot of this is the kind of stuff that I would have more so expected the left to do, almost in certain ways, like the taking rationalization and using like certain scientific observations to drive a narrative, and now this moral relativism has occurred, and I think the divide and tribalist nature of us as humans, I think, is making it very difficult for us to progress past this point, but we will. It's always a pendulum swinging, right? But it is interesting.
And it's not a natural phenomenon.
No.
You know, like this shit is being paid for. Like this stuff is like happening based on like astroturfing campaigns.
Yeah.
And like some like black pilling.
Yeah.
You know, like it's And I don't mean by like Russians, I mean by like billionaire.
No, but there are, Russian bots also that are doing it, but there is a divide. I mean, even on the left, I mean, on the right, it's like, look how stupid they are. And then on the left, they'll be like, look how stupid and they think we're stupid, but look how stupid they are in saying that we're stupid.
Yeah.
And it's just, and I think that both of these approaches attract an audience. Ben Shapiro's audience is just like people who are angry and annoyed and aren't able to necessarily rationalize their anger fully in ways like that they'd like to. So they go to someone who's a spokesperson for the feeling that they're experiencing, but who's able to maybe put it in words that sound better in their heads, that make it seem like, well, yeah, and then they'll regurgitate the same things. That's why every other person, like every other person at the Capitol when it was being stormed, every other like little video we saw, it could be happening in two different places, but people were saying the exact same things. They were repeating the exact same things, and the things that they've heard the same people say over and over again. And on the left, I think there's just a little bit of that too. And it's hard. I think it's just one of these, it's a time that is really hard to, people are thinking that when we say apply empathy, they think we're saying like, hey, forgive the racist people, forgive the people who aren't trying to do anything. And that's, empathy doesn't mean forgiving them. Empathy just means like coming up with a better long-term strategy, rather than relying on a short-term divisive solution, I think,
Yeah. And I mean, yeah, but I do think there is like a little bit of a difference in terms of how these things are being done. For example, I think that on the left, like I think that in this country is, if we're talking about the United States, this country is just like broken in terms of like politics. So you just have like big money interests like fighting out battles in like our politics, and those are the people that usually have the most power in our politics. So like they are like the left is manipulated by like using their empathy against them to maintain the status quo.
Yeah.
So like you get like a lot of things that are important without, like, they use, it's like when companies like a great failed case of it is the Kardashian Pepsi commercial, where she's like, have a Pepsi, and like they're trying to,
and the
like,
police officer's like, oh, I don't hate black people no more.
yeah, and so they're trying to like take advantage of your empathy and like your want for people to get along, and your want for like these issues to be dealt with without ever actually doing anything. So they're trying to appease your like emotional side of it without like actually making any changes that change the world. And I feel like that's the way that the left is manipulated into the status quo. So it's like, oh, look at all these terrible things that are happening, vote for me and I'll fix them. And then they never fix them. They just give you some fucking commercials and like some appointments that are important but aren't like fixing the actual like,
but they give
outcomes.
You the false sense that you've done the right thing because you voted for these right things.
Exactly. And then you have the right that is like obviously like breeding, like trying to stimulate like hatred and xenophobia and like all of these like terrible negative emotions in people in order to get them to come out for them. And those are like super strong emotions. And so like the outcomes of that are like are much worse in my opinion than
I wasn't drawing an
like
equivalency between the two.
Yeah. And so then you have this like this situation where it's like we are stuck in a place where, and like hopefully that changes with like people like AOC and people like Bernie and like the progressives having more power. And of course I'm showing my bias, but of course that's gonna happen. But what it's been so far is like you're voting for Democrats not because they're gonna do anything for you or for people that you want, for communities that you hope that they do things for. It's because the Republicans are going to destroy them even worse at this point, and it's so like it's like both sides are just taking advantage of you to like maintain the status quo of big companies making money,
yes,
and rich people getting richer.
Yes.
and racial structures staying the same.
Yes.
Like,
So this is why you need to be
and-
careful to not fall into tribalist mentality of
Yeah.
thinking it's left
and
versus
this is the
right.
optimism.
This
that
is,
I'm giving-
well, I
that
was
you're
gonna
asking
actually
for at the
say, you know what?
beginning.
Let's leave the. I wanted to leave the audience on an
Sorry.
optimistic note. So maybe you could share something with the audience, an optimistic thought or something. And
Damn, that's a good exercise because my brain doesn't work that way, and I've been trying to get it to work more that way. Well, I do think that like for the first time in a long time, because these issues have been a real thing for a very long time, do have like politicians that are able to speak directly to the people, and are like gaining more traction, and they can fundraise based on like people giving them money rather than like companies giving them money. So maybe that's not very optimistic. Maybe that'll come out with change. I mean, my brain's been pretty low too. Vaccine. Okay, we got the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. That's gonna come out soon. That's only one vaccine, and it's like got 65% efficacy, but like 85% keeping people from going to the hospital, and 100% from like it's 100% skill, 20% concentrated power of will. No, 100% so far. Nobody's died that's taken it from COVID. No one's died from COVID that's taken it. So like that's gonna change the entire world because it doesn't have to be frozen the same way that the other one has to be, and it's only one amount of equipment for each thing because you're only getting it once. So that'll be awesome.
yeah, I don't care that it gives me autism. Thank you very much. Just kidding. Thank you for coming on, Square.
Yeah.
Appreciate you.
Yeah, of course.